This is a visit to France. This is a different France from the one we usually hear about. It isn't the famous or sensational France, or even the tourist's France. This is a visit to ordinary, everyday France. We are going to a simple village that has changed very little in 800 years. You might say that there is really nothing remarkable about this village, but in another sense it is a very remarkable village, if only because it has lasted so long and is so typical of the way most French people live. Multiplied hundreds of times, the village represents the French way of life that has produced or nourished an extraordinary variety of ideas, talent, and behavior, from Charles de Gaulle, Joliot Curie, Sartre, Picasso, and Milot, to Brigitte Bardot, Fernandel, and the little ladies of the Rue de Faubourg Saint-Denis. The name of this village is Wissous. It lies on a plain south of Paris, away from the main highways, but only 7 miles from the Port d'Orléans. It is also remarkable that a village so close to Paris keeps its ancient appearance and ways. Many of the villagers work in Paris, and if you saw them in Paris, you would probably think of them as Parisians, or men of the big city. Jean Legrand, for instance, is a Paris policeman. You can see him in his uniform get off the bus from Paris after work. The mayor of Wissous, Mr. Yametti, has an antique shop in Paris. But the dominant influence in the village is not the city men, but the village's ancient occupation, farming. Within the village are 10 large farm homes, with their courts and outbuildings. The fields lie all around the village. Every morning and every evening the sound of horse-drawn wagons and of tractors can be heard in the cobbled streets, and at harvest time the courtyards in the village lie thick with the golden chaff of wheat and oats. It is remarkable, too, that in 5 years the village you visit will no longer exist, or it will be so changed you would have trouble recognizing it. On the south and west, the great runways of Orly Airport are coming closer and closer. In 5 years, most of the farm fields in those directions will be gone, and the runways will touch the edge of the village. On the north and west, the city of Paris is advancing like a great sand dune that will eventually swallow up the village. Every year, the great blocks of apartment houses come closer across the wheat and potato fields. But at the time of our visit, the village still follows its customary ways: school, buying and selling, food, handicraft, planting and harvest, play, the rhythm of death and the renewal of spring. These are our neighbors, not X, Y, and Z, but Francois and Yves and Suzanne. France is many things to many people. An old popular song says, "Napoleon took a chance, but when I think of France, it's Josephine I'm thinking of." Perhaps, after you have visited this village, when you think of France, you will also think of Francois and Yves and Suzanne. We arrive on the back road from Petit Massy. On the left is the country recreation center of the Paris department store, the Bon Marché. Ahead, to the left, is the church, built about 1150, when the Romanesque style was evolving into the Gothic. The tower is Romanesque. Around the church, the bicycle shop, the butcher shop, the hardware store, cafe and tobacco, the town hall, the school, another cafe, Here Algerians are working in the street. Off to school in smocks. The inevitable handshaking. Bonjour, Francois. Bonjour, Yves. Jean-Paul. Through the shortcuts between garden walls, and the dog Kiki. And more recruits for the 8:45 bell. Some run ahead across the church square. But they are waiting at the school, watched by the garde champêtre. A game of marbles before the bell rings. And the swarming schoolyard. The 6- and 7-year-olds in the École Maternelle write in their copybooks in ink under the eye of their teacher, Madame Bosquet, who then reads to them. That is Mr. Sagan's Lady Goat on the blackboard. The 5e, or 5th form, is taught by the attractive and enceinte Madame Simi. The boy from America is reading. Morning papers from the bookstore, the librairie. Mr. and Mrs. Collin of the épicerie, the grocery store. Cafe and television. And the boys in the back room. The boulangerie, the bakery. Let's move inside. To some people, these scenes show what is wrong with France. The flour is heavily subsidized. The hand labor in the baking process is slow and inefficient. No preservatives are put in the flour so that the bread stales quickly. But there is one good thing about French bread that more than makes up for all that is wrong with it. It is delicious, and the French love it. Victor the blacksmith is 86, a Jacobin and a free thinker, with an enormous contempt for government and church. His shop has been as you see it for hundreds of years. But when Victor goes, it is unlikely that he will have a successor. The village blacksmith is doomed like the farmer. On the other side of Guillaume Bigourdon Street, the farm fields begin, Here is Farmer Poisson, which, translated into English, is Mr. Fish, with his son leading the horses, and his brother seated on the potato planter. In the background is Wissous, and beyond Wissous, the encroaching suburbs of Paris. The seed potatoes come from Brittany. There are no fences in this part of France because there are no cattle. The farm animals are in the courtyard of Mr. Poisson's home on the main street of the village. Here is the courtyard in Wissous. Mr. Poisson leaves for the fields with a tumbrel not too unlike the one Marie Antoinette rode to the guillotine. The garde champêtre stops to pass the time of day with a grocer, while farther down the street, Mr. Poisson's wife and sister do the weekly laundry at the lavoir. There are 3 lavoirs like this in the village. Madame Poisson could well afford a washing machine, but she won't have one. The reason? It won't clean clothes as well, she says, as the ancient way. mail is delivered through the bars of the kitchen window by the factrice, for the mailman is a lady. The right of citizenship to vote for national deputies and departmental officials in the town hall under the symbols of the Republic: liberty, equality, fraternity, and the tricolor of France. Some die in the barrenness of winter. This was an old lady, the mother of the mayor. Her funeral is modest, with no plume on the horse. But after winter, spring, and fine weather, and a kermesse given by the ladies of the church to raise money for good works. And finally, on the day of confirmation, comes the ancient celebration of renewal. The curé fusses over his young flock like an agitated mother hen. An imported bishop adds an imposing beard and dignity. Salut, Suzanne. Salut, François. An imported policeman wears his ceremonial vest. This is the story of the village. Winter and after winter, spring, and then other winters and other springs. But one thing more needs to be said. While this film was being made, the Fourth French Republic was destroyed, and the Fifth Republic rose from its ruins. The French were engaged in a deadly war in Algeria. To read the newspapers, you would believe that France stood in deadly peril from within and without. Perhaps. But when we read the newspapers, we should also think of the quiet, persistent villages of France, and of Francois and Yves and Suzanne.